Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another edition of The Democratic View. I'm the hostess. My name is Phyllis Italiano, and today we are really quite honored to have a distinguished guest, our representative to Congress, Timothy Bishop, who I might add, if he was from East Hampton, we would be calling him a Bonica. He's a local Southampton man. Yep. And thank you so much for coming today.
Well, thank you for having me on. I always enjoy coming here. Thank you.
Well, it's a pleasure. It really is. It's renewal of an old friendship that dates back from, as I would say, from your first run. And one of the things I wanted to talk with you about was, I do this show called East End Veterans.
Yes.
Until I really worked on that show, to me, war was sort of what I saw in the movies. I've really learned what war is through them and through my interviews with you. And I know that Joe Giannini, who is a Vietnam veteran, has many problems that relate to his contact with, that terrible substance that they sprayed all over. And one of the things he was telling me was that you used to have to go to Northport, which is quite a distance away, for any veterans' claims. And what did you do to help the veterans?
Well, we helped bring a satellite clinic to Riverhead. And so East Enders now can get a lot of the services that they need in a much more convenient way. They can go to Riverhead. Some still have to go to Northport, depending on the nature of the treatment that they require. But having the Riverhead facility has really helped a great many East End vets.
And I might add that Joe also told me that he's had wonderful service there, that the veterans, that the people there have been very good, and he's very grateful to you for that.
Yes, well, the service that our veterans here on Long Island receive, both at the satellite clinics and at Northport, in my view, is first rate. I mean, there's been an enormous amount of concern, quite justified, with respect to wait times at other VA facilities and quality of care at other VA facilities across the country. And we've just passed legislation in the House that the President signed into law, I think yesterday, that aims to address a lot of the issues that have been raised, which I'll talk about in a minute. But thankfully, the quality of care that Long Island vets are exposed to and have access to is really quite good. I'm very proud of Northport and the facility there and the services that our veterans receive there, and I'm very proud of the clinic in Riverhead. So a lot of the horror stories that we heard across the country are foreign to us. Clearly, we have to, as a member of Congress, we have to act on it much more globally. And we have. We've passed bipartisan legislation that will provide additional resources to the VA to hire more physicians and more other healthcare professionals. It will also allow a certain category of veterans to have vouchers that they could use to seek care from private medical services, and that care will then be paid for by the VA. So if a veteran is unable to get the care that he or she needs in a timely fashion from the Veterans Hospital, they can now go to a private facility.
That's a wonderful step forward.
Yeah,
really
long
it is.
overdue, and it's also just the first step. There's lots more that needs to be done to reform a system that's essentially overwhelmed. I mean, it's simply unarguable that the VA was simply not prepared or equipped to deal with the huge influx of veterans returning from Iraq and Afghanistan. I mean, we've had 2.5 million people, 2.5 million members of our armed forces routed through Iraq and Afghanistan since 2001, and an enormous proportion of them require care now that they've been discharged. And the VA simply wasn't prepared. And even though the Congress has practically doubled the budget of the Veterans Administration, particularly as it relates to health care, it's still not enough. So this is the first step in what I hope will be many.
You know, one of the things that you mentioned to me on one of the earlier interviews was that something that I really had not realized is that a lot of these veterans that are coming back from Iraq and Afghanistan in years past would not have made it.
Yes.
But because of the care.
Tremendous advances in battlefield medicine and tremendous advances in the ability to treat grievous injuries that in the past would have been fatal injuries. And so, an enormous number of vets who, as I've said before, would have died on the battlefield in Vietnam or Korea or World War II are now surviving and being assisted by the VA. And that's part of what has happened to the VA in terms of the fact that it needs more resources to deal with really a tremendous presentation of need on the part of our nation's veterans.
Yes, yeah, I know. That's. I mean, it must be overwhelming to have all of these guys coming back with such great needs.
There's a lot, but I think, as I said, in Northport, the VA has responded beautifully, in my opinion. But that is not the case across the country uniformly, and that's what our legislation addresses.
Yes, I know. That's what I've heard from Joe Giannini, who obviously has really grievous illnesses that relate to his service, and he has had wonderful care and very sympathetic people that he has worked with there. He was quite pleased.
Yes.
You know, it's amazing when I do that show. They all have hearing aids.
There's a lot of issues that the generation of Vietnam vets have, and that's the generation of my contemporaries. I'm 64, and so the Vietnam vets are somewhere from low 70s or early 70s through through mid to early 50s or mid to late 50s, and so that's again part of what's presenting the VA with such a challenge, is that generation of vets are now, at a point in their lives where illnesses may manifest themselves, let's say, that didn't in their 20s or 30s.
Yes. And as a matter of fact, Joe gave me a copy of the letter that he got from the Veterans Administration that says that Congressman Timothy Bishop was the person who helped to facilitate his claim so that he was able to get the care that he needs. And he seriously has real difficulty.
He's a wonderful man, and who, served with great honor and great distinction, and now has come back and, is very active in his community and is serving his community in other ways. Yes. So when he came to us for assistance, we were, delighted to provide it. And, and I'll say that of all the things our office does, that part of our service that I'm the most proud of is the service that we've been able to provide individually to our district's veterans. And we really have done, I think, really, really good work on behalf of, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of veterans over the years.
And I hope that the people who are listening are aware of the fact that that is what they should do, that they should go to your office, which is really relatively easy to do.
Yes, all they need to do is call us, and I'll give the number. It's 631-289-6500. We have 2 people in our office full-time who spend all day, every day, working on veterans issues and active duty military issues. They are quite expert and quite good at what they do. And as I said, we've assisted hundreds and hundreds of vets over the years. And so if a veteran has an issue that they've been unable to get resolved, they should give us a call. Now, we're not miracle workers, but they should give us a call, and we'll give it our best shot. And I think more often than not, we're successful in bringing the appropriate level of service to that veteran.
And one veteran who is deceased now, but whose wife came to you, and that is the Ryan Dickinson. I'd like you to tell everyone the story of this man.
Okay, well, first, it's a tragic story. Ryan Dickinson was a young man who was motivated to enlist in the Army by the events of September 11th. He served with distinction for 7 years, including a 15-month tour of duty in Iraq, very long tour. And he was medically retired from the Army as a result of PTSD, as well as some injuries to both his ankle and his back. And so he medically retired. His last base was Fort Hood in Texas. And so he stayed in the area, enrolled as a student in an art, post-secondary art program. But he stayed in the area with his wife and his 2 young children. And September of 2013, he went to a birthday party on the base. There was some kind of altercation or confrontation or argument. I'm not even sure. I don't even think his family is sure. And a man who was an active duty soldier at the base went back to his living quarters, got his weapon, and came back to the party and shot Ryan at point blank range and killed him. And at the time, he had his children now are 7 and 6, so they were 6 and 7. Pardon me, were 6 and 5, and young wife, and so it was, as I said, just an unspeakable tragedy. But it was compounded by the fact that when an active duty soldier separates and becomes a veteran, he has a year to transition his active duty military life insurance policy to a veteran's life insurance policy with a, I hate the phrase, but with a death benefit. It's not a benefit, but a death benefit of $400,000. He had not done that, and he was killed within that 1 year window. And so his wife and his mother came to us because we had previously assisted him when he first was stationed at Fort Hood. He was not provided on-base housing, and so he came to us and asked if we could intervene and see if we could get him on-base housing, which we did, and we were successful in getting him on-base housing. So they knew about the work we do on behalf of our veterans, and so he an active duty military. So he came to us, and we really did some really good casework here where we were able to construct an argument that convinced the VA that had he been, because he was also in the process of seeking what's called a 100% service-related disability. And if he had been granted that disability within a year, that life insurance policy would have automatically been reinstated. It would not have been canceled. So we made the argument that he would have successfully petitioned the VA for 100% permanently disabled status. Therefore, he would have been within a year. So he would have been granted the status, would have happened within a year, and therefore the policy would have been continued. And the VA accepted our argument and granted the policy. So the family has now received a $400,000 life insurance benefit. And it doesn't bring Ryan back. It doesn't make his absence any less painful, but it does provide some measure of financial security to his family. And his wife, I think quite smartly, has set up a college fund for her 2 children. And so it's, as I say, it is a tragedy that no family should have to go through. But at least there is some measure of financial security that his young family can now count on.
It's really a very touching story, and I can't commend you enough for helping this family of a wife and 2 young children.
I'm very proud of the work our office has done on that issue as well as a great many others. But I'm also very, very proud that our district produces young men like Ryan Dickinson, who's, he didn't have to enlist, but, he was so taken by the attacks of September 11th that he was motivated to do his part. And he did. And as I said, he served, in great peril and with great distinction for 15 months in Iraq.
Right. Well, that's a very difficult thing, and that PTSD, which if you look back over the years of the wars that the United States has been involved with, we would call it things like shell shock and battle fatigue, and only now are we really recognizing what war does to people.
Indeed, and also, I think with PTSD getting the attention it deserves, and for too long did not get, it also helps encourage those who are suffering from it to come forward. There's often a reluctance on the part of those who are suffering from it to come forward. They see it as a sign of weakness, and an injury that's visible is much easier to deal with and explain than an injury that's invisible. But the fact that the issue of PTSD has become so prominent, it has encouraged a great many who are suffering from it to come forward and get the help they need and they deserve.
And we all know that when they do come back from active duty, particularly, it's very hard to integrate back into society.
It's very hard, and I've spent a lot of time with the members of the Suffolk County chapter of the Vietnam Veterans of America, and as I say, they're contemporaries in terms of age, and I don't know anyone who went to Vietnam that came back the same person he was when he left.
And it isn't only that, it's that it stays with them
yes,
forever.
It stays with them.
I mean, I know I say to Joe Giannini, I say to him, there's other parts to your life besides Vietnam, but Vietnam is definitive.
It was a searing experience for those who were there, and the fact that we're still now, 40 years after the last of our troops left the country, still dealing with issues having to do with exposure to Agent Orange, PTSD. I mean, it just shows, as I said, what a searing experience it was. And in fact, the Agent Orange experience is one of the things that's led me to be as involved as I have been in the issue of exposure to burn pits and the illnesses that result from exposure to the toxins that result from these open air burn pits that we had all over Iraq and Afghanistan. And
why don't you tell people exactly what a burn pit is?
A burn pit is a huge open air area in which all of the waste that a base produced, be it human waste, be it body parts, be it munitions, be it tires, being plastic bottles, styrofoam, all of that waste was simply dumped in this burn pit and set afire using airplane fuel as the accelerant. And so the amount, I mean, this would have been outlawed in a heartbeat if it were in the United States, simply not allowed. And the fact that, literally tens of thousands of our troops were exposed to the toxins associated with these open air burn pits. And we're really just in the last few years seeing the really serious adverse health implications. So I started working on this issue, I believe, in 2005 or 2006. I was told about it by, I have a Veterans Advisory Board, and a guy came to me, had a daughter serving as a nurse in Iraq. And he said to me, you wouldn't believe what my daughter's telling me about how they're getting rid of the waste in Iraq and how they're all, having, upper respiratory problems and so on. So I started looking into it, and I realized almost none of my colleagues in the Congress knew a thing about it. So we began by getting them banned, and we were successful in the National Defense Authorization Act of, I think it was 2008, getting them banned, except when the military had to certify to the Congress that there was no other means of disposing of the waste. But if there was another means, incinerators or whatever, they had to use it. So we were successful in that. Then the next thing we focused on was the establishment of a registry, so that every single member of our armed forces who was stationed on a base that had a burn pit would be able to, in effect, register and be eligible for diagnosis and assessment of their health conditions and so on. We were successful in getting that done, and in fact the registry just started. The VA finally got the registry up and running a couple of months ago. Now it's got bugs, it's got quirks, and they'll get fixed, but having a registry is a very, very good thing. And letting members of our armed forces know that, hey, you may be suffering from any of the following, and if you are, chances are it's relating to burn pit exposure. Now what I'm trying to do is get the funding for 3 centers of excellence in the country, funded by the Department of Defense and VA, for the research, diagnosis, and treatment of burn pit-related ailments. One of the leaders in that effort right now is Stony Brook University, and they have a very, very well-developed expertise in this area. But what motivated me, in part, was that I did not want to see burn pit exposure become the Agent Orange of the Iraq War.
Yes.
And as I said, we're still 40 years later, still adding
right.
diseases to the registry for Agent Orange. I want to get on top of burn pits before, so that we can really deal with those members of our armed forces who were exposed.
I know Joe has told me that only in recent times has the heart disease that he has
Yes.
just been categorized as being caused by Agent Orange.
Yes.
And speaking of kinds of things that cause detriment to environments, I know you were involved in something that had to do with bee pollination. It was something about stopping some kind of pesticide of nicotine until it could be proven to be safe. And you were part of the
Yes.
people who was involved in that, which
Yes.
is very important because
I think particularly
bees
out
are
here,
it.
particularly out here. Yeah, yeah. I just think that things that we can do to recognize the health implications of things that we may in the past have either not thought about or taken for granted, very, very important to do. I think it's an appropriate role of government to do that.
And I always quote you. I've quoted you so many times on one of the things you said on one of the first times I interviewed you, when you said the economy is the environment and the environment is the economy. And people sometimes don't realize how
Well, I don't know
interwoven.
that there are too many areas of the country for which that statement is more true than right here.
Oh, please.
I mean, if you look at what our economy is rooted in, and it's rooted in travel, tourism, farming, fishing, and everything associated with the second home industry. And what they all have in common is the necessity that the environment in which all of those activities take place be preserved at the highest possible level. And so I've said this before, the notion that if you're pro-environment, you're anti-business is a false choice.
That's right.
On Eastern Long Island, if you're pro-environment, you are pro-business.
That's right. That's a very good point. I'm going to quote you on that one now,
Okay.
too. We just have been dealing with the formula store type of
Yes.
legislation here in East Hampton, and it will be passing. And I'm very proud of the fact that there is we're not going to wind up looking like a lot of other places.
I just think it's so, this little slice of the world is a very special place. And I think it's very important that we maintain the character of the place, both in order to maintain the heritage of Eastern Long Island,
Yes.
but also to maintain the economic stability.
And as a man who picked potatoes down there on the potato farm,
I did.
you know all about that heritage.
those
I
are-
do too, having come out here in the early
know,
50s,
I
so
know.
I know what this
Those
place
were some
was
of the
like.
happiest days of my life. When I was,
Please, I'm devoted to Eastern Long Island, always have been. And the other thing I wanted to mention is that maybe people are not so aware of the ways in which you do help your constituents. I know who was surged by LIPA in the aftermath of Sandy and lost every single thing in my house, from light bulbs to televisions. There were three things I didn't lose. I didn't lose my dishwasher, my refrigerator, and my washer dryer. The washer dryer downstairs, my furnace, everything gone.
Oh, boy.
From all of that power. And I did not want my insurance company to be involved in it. I insisted that LIPA be responsible, as it took me almost a month to get everything back in place. And as I was appealing, I called your office, and one of your guys, who I even wrote a letter about the Star to, did call LIPA, and LIPA paid.
Great.
So I was very, very proud of that, and I do want people to recognize that if you have a particular problem, that your office is very willing to help.
Yeah, we do a lot of it. I think it's the most honorable work that a member of Congress can do. We've successfully resolved over 16,000 constituent cases in the 12 years that I've been in office, and I'm just very proud of that. As I said, I think it's the most honorable and the most impactful work that a member of Congress can do. And you know, whether it's veterans issues or senior citizen issues, or you know, trying to help somebody get a mortgage modification, or dealing with the bureaucracy of a large entity like LIPA, or whatever it is, immigration, whatever it is, we have people that are very good at this, work very hard, very invested in delivering for the people that that are relying on them. And as I say, I'm just really, really proud of it.
And we're also proud of the fact that you're working very hard in that Congress, which has got to be really frustrating.
It's very frustrating. It's just a real challenge. We are so badly polarized, so victimized by dysfunction, so victimized, in my opinion, by a relatively small group of people who are extreme in their ideology, and it's just extremely difficult to get any work done. My own view is that the Tea Party class that came to Congress in 2010, that was the tipping point. That was the point. We've always been partisan, but we always retained an ability to come together and get things done. Once that class arrived, it just changed the dynamics so in terms of how the House of Representatives operates, that it's just become exceedingly difficult. And it's no surprise that the 112th and the 113th Congresses have been the two least productive Congresses in our history.
Well, my money is on you, sir.
Thank you.
I know you're going to
Thank
do
you.
all you can
I
for
hope
our
I can.
area.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for coming. I'm sure that people are going to know what they can. Gee whiz, it must be so hard to work in that Congress.
It's very